Welcome back to another inspiring and transformative wealth lesson presented by D.R.S. Hakim. Today's lesson is titled, The Value of Initiative. Stop wasting time and start producing. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you've been following the series from the beginning, we're honored to have you with us. These lessons are designed to challenge the way we think and behave, while helping us develop the character, discipline, judgment, and habits necessary to earn, manage, multiply, and preserve lasting wealth. Before we turn today's lesson over to Professor Hakim, let's review a few questions submitted by our global viewers. Today's first question comes from Marcus in Atlanta, Georgia, who asks, Professor Hakim, how do I know when I should stop preparing for a business opportunity and actually take action, especially when I don't feel completely ready? Our second question comes from Charlotte in Manchester, United Kingdom, who asks, D.R.S. Hakim, can someone become more proactive if they have spent most of their life depending on other people to tell them what to do? Our final question comes from Dmitry in Moscow, Russia, who asks, Professor Hakim, how can I take initiative at work without making my employer think I'm overstepping my position? Professor Hakim will address each of these questions at the conclusion of today's lesson, so be sure to stay with us. And now, please join me in welcoming Professor Hakim.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you to everyone joining us from around the world. As I sit here today reflecting upon the subject of initiative, I am reminded of how many meaningful advancements in life begin before we feel completely prepared. There have been occasions throughout my own journey when I possessed neither perfect circumstances nor absolute certainty about what would happen next. What I did possess was enough knowledge to recognize an opportunity, enough judgment to evaluate it, and enough willingness to begin. Looking back, I recognize that some of those decisions opened doors that continued producing opportunities many years later. We cannot expect every worthwhile opportunity to arrive with instructions telling us precisely what to do. There are times when no one is going to knock on our door and announce that the ideal moment has arrived. No one may remind us to develop the idea, acquire the skill, make the telephone call, submit the proposal, investigate the opportunity, improve the business, or begin the project. At some point, we must recognize what deserves our attention and possess enough initiative to act. In our previous lesson, The Wealth of Personal Responsibility, Stop Blaming Others and Change Your Future, we examined the importance of accepting ownership of our decisions and refusing to make other people or circumstances entirely responsible for the direction of our lives. Moving forward, once responsibility has been accepted, there must eventually be action. Today's lesson is titled, The Value of Initiative, Stop Wasting Time and Start Producing. Initiative is the willingness to recognize what needs attention and begin taking appropriate action without constantly requiring someone else to instruct, persuade, remind, or pressure you. Initiative transforms intention into movement. It distinguishes the individual who continually discusses what should happen from the individual who begins determining how it can happen. Ideas themselves are remarkably common. Millions of people possess good ideas. There are individuals who have imagined businesses they never established, books they never wrote, inventions they never developed, qualifications they never pursued, and financial plans they never implemented. The possession of an idea is not equivalent to the execution of an idea. The world cannot benefit from a solution that remains permanently inside someone's imagination. At the same time, initiative must never be confused with impulsiveness. Intelligent initiative does not mean acting recklessly, ignoring legitimate risks, or making important decisions without sufficient information. Initiative requires judgment. A mature individual investigates, evaluates, prepares, and then acts when sufficient information becomes available. An impulsive individual may act before thinking, while a chronically hesitant individual may continue thinking long after action has become appropriate. Wisdom requires us to recognize the difference. There is a point at which additional preparation contributes very little additional value. You may have gathered the relevant information, understood the principal risks, consulted knowledgeable individuals where appropriate, and identified a reasonable first step, yet continue researching because research feels safer than action. At that moment, what appears to be preparation may actually have become procrastination. Preparation moves toward execution. Procrastination continually moves execution farther away. This distinction matters tremendously in business and wealth creation because opportunities are not necessarily permanent. Markets evolve, technologies change, consumer preferences develop, properties are purchased, positions are filled, relationships are established, and new competitors emerge. An opportunity that exists today may look considerably different 6 months from now. This does not mean you should chase everything that appears promising. Initiative also includes the maturity to reject opportunities that do not meet your standards. Successful individuals are not merely people who act quickly. They learn to evaluate efficiently and make decisions. Sometimes the appropriate decision is yes, and sometimes it is no. What they avoid is allowing indecision itself to become a permanent condition. Initiative is more than starting. There is another dimension of initiative that is sometimes overlooked. Initiative does not merely mean beginning something. It also means recognizing what must happen next. Starting is important, but beginning a project and abandoning it shortly afterward is not the type of initiative we are discussing. Mature initiative includes follow-through. It asks, what is the next necessary action? What obstacle must now be addressed? What information has this stage revealed? What adjustments should be made? This is particularly important because the excitement associated with beginning something new often disappears once the work becomes difficult. The business idea is exciting until administrative responsibilities appear. Writing a book is exciting until revisions begin. Education is exciting until assignments become demanding. A new financial objective is exciting until it requires sacrificing something we would prefer to purchase. Initiative begins movement, but character, discipline, and consistency determine whether that movement can be sustained long enough to produce meaningful results. Consider an independent pharmacist who owns a small neighborhood pharmacy. For years, the business has operated successfully using conventional methods, but gradually the pharmacist begins to notice that many elderly customers and people with physical challenges struggle to collect their medications consistently. Some customers call in repeatedly asking whether prescriptions are ready, while others forget refill dates altogether. The pharmacist could simply regard these difficulties as the customer's responsibility and continue operating exactly as before. Instead, he begins investigating whether the pharmacy can improve the experience. He speaks with customers and caregivers, studies applicable regulations, evaluates secure technology, examines delivery logistics, and develops a system that can provide appropriate refill reminders and coordinated home delivery where legally permitted. Rather than immediately investing heavily in an elaborate system, he tests the service with a limited group of customers. The response reveals several problems he had not anticipated. Delivery windows need improvement. Some customers prefer phone reminders rather than digital notifications, and caregivers need clearer procedures. He adjusts the system accordingly, and months later, the pharmacy has not merely added another service, it has solved a genuine problem for the community while creating additional value for the business. Notice where initiative occurred. It was not simply in launching the delivery program. Initiative appeared when the pharmacist paid attention to a recurring problem, investigated it, developed a solution, tested the solution, listened to feedback, and improved what he had created. This illustrates an important principle of initiative. Do not merely ask what you can start, ask what you can improve. The individual who develops this habit begins looking at problems differently. Instead of assuming that every inconvenience must remain exactly as it is, that individual begins examining whether there is an intelligent, ethical, and practical way to improve the situation. Initiative, therefore, changes the question from, when will someone give me an opportunity, to what can I begin developing today that may make me capable of recognizing, creating, or qualifying for an opportunity tomorrow. I would now like to examine initiative from another perspective by turning our attention to the anatomy and physiology of the human brain. When people discuss the brain and behavior, they sometimes speak as though one small area must be responsible for a particular quality. Human neurobiology is considerably more sophisticated. Initiative, planning, motivation, attention, memory, emotional evaluation, decision-making, and action arise through coordinated activity across multiple brain regions and networks. Let us begin with the prefrontal cortex, located toward the front of the brain behind the forehead. The prefrontal cortex is heavily involved in what neuroscientists describe as executive functions, including planning, decision-making, maintaining goals, evaluating consequences, controlling inappropriate responses, shifting strategies when necessary, and organizing behavior toward objectives. This is highly relevant to initiative because intelligent initiative requires more than simply doing something. We must determine what deserves action. Imagine receiving an exciting business proposal. Immediate action may feel attractive, but prefrontal systems contribute to our ability to pause, compare alternatives, consider long-term consequences, and determine whether the opportunity is consistent with our objectives. Initiative without adequate executive control can easily become impulsiveness. Another important area is the anterior cingulate cortex, commonly abbreviated as the ACC. Among its many functions, the anterior cingulate participates in monitoring conflict, detecting errors or competing demands, evaluating effort, and helping us adjust behavior when circumstances require a different response. This becomes important when initiative encounters resistance. Suppose you begin implementing a carefully considered strategy and the results are substantially different from what you expected. Something must recognize the discrepancy between expectation and outcome so that behavior can be adjusted. Goal-directed behavior depends not merely upon beginning, but also upon monitoring what happens afterward. When we consider these different areas together, the prefrontal cortex, anterior cingulate cortex, we begin to appreciate that there is no single, isolated initiative center. Human action emerges from extraordinarily complex interactions involving attention, memory, emotion, motivation, planning, inhibition, learning, and movement. I would now like you to consider something broader. Look carefully at the creation surrounding us, from the enormous structures of the heavens to the microscopic processes occurring within our own bodies, and you will discover initiative and movement everywhere. Consider the celestial bodies. The Earth rotates upon its axis while simultaneously traveling in its orbit around the Sun. The Moon orbits the Earth. Other planets travel through their respective orbits around the Sun. The Sun itself moves within the Milky Way, and our galaxy is also in motion. Now consider the atmosphere surrounding our planet. Air masses move, winds travel across continents and oceans, and atmospheric circulation redistributes heat and moisture across the Earth. Water evaporates from oceans and other surfaces, rises into the atmosphere, condenses, and eventually returns through precipitation. Vast ocean currents transport water across extraordinary distances, rivers flow across landscapes, and tides continually rise and fall under gravitational influences. Blood carries oxygen and nutrients toward tissues while transporting carbon dioxide and other metabolic products away from them. Throughout creation, movement accompanies processes of change, circulation, development, and life. I believe there is a valuable behavioral lesson within that observation. We were not created merely to accumulate knowledge, abilities, intentions, and opportunities while remaining perpetually stationary. There comes a time when what exists within us must be translated into appropriate movement. Knowledge must move into application. An idea must move into investigation. A plan must move into execution. Talent must move through practice and development. Opportunity must move from recognition into evaluation and, when appropriate, into action. But notice something else about the examples I have given you. The movement we observe throughout creation is not simply meaningless activity. The heart does not pump randomly. Circulation has function. Planetary motion follows physical laws. Biological transport occurs within organized systems. Therefore, when I speak about movement in human behavior, I am not encouraging activity merely for activity's sake. Initiative is purposeful movement. Purpose gives movement direction. Judgment determines whether that direction is appropriate. Discipline helps sustain the movement, and initiative begins it. There is a popular expression that says, if you don't use it, you lose it. There is certainly practical wisdom in that statement, but I prefer to say, if you don't move it, you lose it. Why do I prefer the word move? Because possessing something is not enough. You can possess knowledge and never apply it. You can possess talent and never develop it. You can possess extraordinary creativity and never produce anything from it. You can possess an excellent plan and never execute it. You can recognize a valuable opportunity and never investigate it. Potential that remains permanently stationary cannot produce the results it was capable of producing. So I encourage you, do not merely possess potential, move it. Do not merely possess knowledge, apply it. Do not merely recognize opportunity, investigate it. Do not merely make plans, execute them. If you don't move it, you lose it. I want to emphasize that I am speaking about purposeful movement, not uncontrolled activity. Some people are extraordinarily busy while accomplishing remarkably little because their actions lack direction. Activity consumes energy. Intellectual initiative directs energy towards something worthwhile. This brings us naturally to triadic alignment. Initiative requires harmony between thought, conviction, and action. The cranial brain allows us to analyze information, calculate consequences, and develop strategy. The heart brain regulates the value of initiative and emotional convictions, influencing our decisions. Preparation, courage, resourcefulness, patience, confidence, curiosity, resilience, and disciplined action. The objective is not to persuade yourself that every idea will succeed, because that would be unrealistic. The objective is to create a mental environment in which worthwhile opportunities receive intelligent evaluation rather than automatic rejection as a result of fear. A pen does not tell you to ignore reality. It helps you approach reality constructively. This is especially important when initiative requires us to move beyond what is familiar, because unfamiliarity can generate emotional resistance even when strategic reasoning tells us that an action is appropriate. Initiative can also be weakened by negative acidic toxins or gnats. Thoughts such as, I must know everything before I begin, someone else is probably more qualified, I don't have enough connections, or if I fail, people will think I'm foolish, can gradually make avoidance appear reasonable. These should be replaced with positive essential nutrients or PENs. Instead of saying, I cannot do this because I do not know enough, the constructive response becomes, what specifically do I need to learn? Instead of saying, I do not have the resources, ask, what resources are actually necessary for the first responsible step? That shift in thought can produce a very different pattern of behavior. Initiative must create value. Initiative should ultimately create value. Simply doing something before anyone asks does not automatically make the action useful. If your initiative creates confusion, unnecessary expense, or additional problems for everyone around you, greater judgment is required. Before taking significant action, ask yourself whether the action solves a legitimate problem, improves efficiency, serves someone, reduces unnecessary cost, increases quality, protects something valuable, or creates an opportunity that did not previously exist. This is especially important for entrepreneurs because the marketplace does not compensate effort merely because effort occurred. Sustainable businesses generally require the creation and delivery of value that other people recognize and are willing to exchange resources for. Therefore, instead of asking only, how can I make more money? Begin asking, what problem can I solve exceptionally well? What need can I meet? What process can I improve? What knowledge can I acquire that makes me more useful? What value can I create that people genuinely need? What legitimate opportunity have I repeatedly noticed but never investigated? When I encounter problems, do I habitually complain about them or examine whether I can contribute to a solution? What knowledge, ability, or opportunity in my life has remained stationary because I have failed to move it into action? What meaningful action would I begin this week if I stopped requiring myself to feel completely confident first? Self-reflection. Before we turn our attention to today's viewer questions, I would like you to conduct an honest personal assessment. Ask yourself, where in my life am I wasting time and opportunity waiting for someone else's permission, encouragement, or instruction? Have I allowed preparation to become procrastination? Do not rush through these questions. Select the one that challenges you most and examine your answer carefully. Self-reflection becomes valuable when greater awareness produces intentional behavioral change. The objective is not to criticize yourself for everything you have failed to accomplish. The objective is to identify where your behavior can now change and what appropriate movement should follow that realization. Throughout the coming week, I encourage you to repeat and apply these affirmations. I recognize worthwhile opportunities and evaluate them wisely. I prepare carefully and act when action becomes appropriate. I do not require perfect circumstances to make meaningful progress. I develop solutions instead of becoming comfortable with problems. With righteous guidance, I act with courage, sound judgment, discipline, and integrity. Now, I want you to do something with today's lesson. Do not finish this video, agree with what you heard, and then return immediately to the same patterns you had before you watched it. Move something. Identify one meaningful action you have postponed for at least 30 days. Perhaps there is a business idea you need to investigate, an application you need to submit, a professional skill you need to begin developing, a proposal sitting unfinished on your computer, or a problem within your business that you have repeatedly postponed addressing. Write down precisely why you have not acted and distinguish legitimate obstacles from excuses. If additional information is genuinely required, identify exactly what information is missing and obtain it. If financial resources are the obstacle, determine whether a smaller and more responsible version of the idea can be tested. If fear is preventing action, identify the actual risk rather than allowing undefined anxiety to make the decision for you. Before this week concludes, complete one measurable action that moves the objective forward. You do not have to finish everything, but you must move something. Now, let us turn our attention to the questions Sarah introduced at the beginning of today's lesson. Marcus asks, how do I know when I should stop preparing for a business opportunity and actually take action, especially when I don't feel completely ready? Marcus, thank you for your excellent question. One of the most difficult judgments in entrepreneurship is determining when additional preparation remains valuable and when preparation has become a means of avoiding uncertainty. I would not recommend using your emotional feeling of readiness as the primary standard. You may have completed extensive preparation and still feel nervous because the next step contains uncertainty. Conversely, someone may feel extraordinarily confident while being completely unprepared. Confidence and competence are related, but they are not identical. Instead, establish objective criteria. Do you clearly understand the problem you intend to solve? Have you spoken with the people you expect to serve? Is there reasonable evidence that they value the solution you are proposing? Do you understand the principal costs? Have you considered regulatory or legal requirements where applicable? Do you understand the most significant risks? Can you test the idea without placing yourself or your family in an irresponsible financial position? If you can reasonably answer those questions, you may not need another month of theoretical preparation. You may need controlled exposure to reality. This is where I strongly favor testing over guessing. Instead of asking, should I build the entire company? Ask, what is the smallest responsible test that can provide meaningful information? Perhaps you can begin with 10 customers rather than 1,000. Perhaps you can test a service before leasing a large office. Perhaps you can create a prototype before manufacturing substantial inventory. The objective is to obtain real-world evidence while limiting unnecessary risk. If the test reveals that your assumptions were incorrect, do not automatically regard that outcome as failure. You have acquired information through experience. Provided the test was responsible and the potential loss manageable, you may now possess knowledge that prevents a substantially larger mistake later. There is another question I encourage entrepreneurs to ask. What specific information am I expecting another month of preparation to give me? From is train and Indy. If you can identify something important that you genuinely do not know, continue preparing. If you cannot identify it and you are merely waiting to feel fearless, recognize that the feeling you are waiting for may never arrive. Courage does not require the absence of uncertainty. It requires the ability to make sound decisions despite appropriate uncertainty. Preparation should ultimately make action more intelligent. If it merely makes action later, something must change. Charlotte asks, can someone become more proactive if they have spent most of their life depending on other people to tell them what to do? Charlotte, thank you for asking this question because many individuals incorrectly assume that initiative is something you either naturally possess or you do not. Proactive behavior should be developed. Begin with responsibilities whose requirements are already clear. Do not attempt to transform your entire personality in 1 week. Begin by reducing unnecessary dependence upon reminders. If you already know a responsibility must be completed, schedule it yourself. If you know something will be required tomorrow, prepare it today. If you recognize a small problem that falls legitimately within your authority, address it rather than waiting for someone else to notice. I would also encourage you to develop anticipatory thinking. At the end of each day, consider what tomorrow is likely to require. If you have a meeting, what should you prepare beforehand? If you manage a household, what will the family need? If you operate a business, which responsibilities could become problems if ignored? If you are employed, what information will your supervisor or customers likely require? You begin moving from responding only after circumstances demand something from you toward anticipating legitimate needs before they become urgent. There is also an emotional dimension. Individuals who have spent many years being directed by others may feel uncomfortable making decisions because decisions carry responsibility. You must therefore become comfortable making small, appropriate decisions and accepting their outcomes. Some will be excellent and others will require correction, but both experiences educate you. Seeking advice should not be confused with dependence. Wise people continue seeking counsel throughout their lives. The distinction is whether counsel helps inform your judgment or replaces your willingness to exercise judgment altogether. Gradually, your internal question changes. Instead of asking, "What is someone going to tell me to do?" you begin asking, "What needs attention and what part of it appropriately belongs to me?" That represents a significant development in independence, reliability, and personal leadership. You do not have to become reckless or reject assistance in order to become proactive. You simply begin accepting greater responsibility for identifying and completing the actions that are properly yours. Dimitri asks, "How can I take initiative at work without making my employer think I'm overstepping my position?" Dimitri, thank you for an important professional question. The distinction you are describing is the difference between initiative and unauthorized action. Professional initiative must always be accompanied by judgment, communication, humility, and respect for legitimate organizational authority. Begin by understanding your role. Know which decisions you are authorized to make independently, which decisions require consultation, and which decisions belong to someone else entirely. Initiative does not mean ignoring those boundaries. In fact, respecting them demonstrates professional maturity. Suppose you identify a process that you believe is wasting considerable time. Instead of changing the process without authorization, gather information. Determine whether the problem is recurring, estimate its impact, develop a practical alternative, and then approach the appropriate supervisor. Explain that you have noticed a recurring difficulty and have considered a possible way to improve it. Then ask whether your supervisor would be interested in reviewing your proposal. That approach communicates initiative without arrogance. Employers already know that organizations experience difficulties. An employee who repeatedly identifies deficiencies without offering constructive thought may eventually become another source of frustration. The employee who says, "I noticed this problem, I investigated why it may be happening, and here are 2 possible approaches," demonstrates a very different level of professional maturity. You must also be willing to accept that your idea may not be implemented. There may be information available to management that you do not possess, including budgetary, legal, strategic, contractual, or operational considerations influencing the decision. Initiative means contributing intelligently. It does not mean demanding that every suggestion you make be adopted. If your supervisor declines a proposal, respond professionally, and, if appropriate, ask whether there is something you overlooked that would improve your understanding. You can then use that information to develop better judgment for the future. When leadership discovers that you respect boundaries, think carefully, communicate appropriately, and bring constructive solutions, trust can develop. As trust increases, greater autonomy may follow. Responsibilities that once required approval may eventually be entrusted to you because you have demonstrated that you can exercise sound judgment. That is how initiative can become a pathway toward leadership rather than a source of conflict. As we conclude today's wealth lesson, my sincere hope is that you will do more than consider the principles we have discussed. I encourage you to apply them. I recommend that you start initiating your transformation by securing copies of my transformation manuscripts, starting with Retrain Your Brain and Heart for Financial Success. These literary works provide an opportunity to study these principles beyond the limits of a single video and, most importantly, to begin applying them to your own life. Reading alone is never the final objective. The purpose of acquiring useful knowledge is to understand it, examine it, and translate what is beneficial into constructive behavior. Now, here is my final call to action for you today. Do not leave this lesson without deciding what you are going to move. Before you go to sleep tonight, identify one worthwhile objective and write down the first measurable action you will take. Then establish when you are going to complete it. Do not merely say one day, eventually, or when the time is right. Give the action a place in your schedule. If today's lesson has benefited you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and share this lesson with your family, friends, colleagues, and loved ones. Someone within your circle may possess an extraordinary idea, talent, or opportunity, but simply needs encouragement to begin moving forward. If you have a question you would like considered for an upcoming wealth lesson, please send it to the email address provided in the description below or leave your question in the comments section. Thank you for continuing this journey with us. Continue learning, continue developing your character, and most importantly, continue applying sound principles to your behavior, your business, your finances, and your future. Live long, maintain high standards, perform the best deeds, and continue to prosper.
Thank you for watching. We hope today's lesson has encouraged you to apply these timeless wealth-building principles in your own life. To gain a broader understanding of the principles we've discussed throughout this series, we encourage you to invest in your future transformation by securing a copy of each of D.R.S. Hakim's wealth-empowering and transformative manuscripts. Visit our online bookstore at retrainyourbrainforsuccess.com. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. There is much more to discover, and we look forward to seeing you in our next exciting wealth lesson. And remember, as D.R.S. Hakim has often stated, procrastination is the enemy of success.